Obviously, because of the events this week, this will not be a regular show. I don't want to repeat what you've found in all the other tributes in the last few days. I would just like to share what Steve, what he brought to me. There are two main influences in my life: the Beatles, which got me into being a musician, and Steve Jobs, who got me to understand computers. Because I don't understand coding and all that. I mean, I do a little bit of it, but I'm not a geek. I can make my way around a Mac and I could fix anybody's Mac for them, but I'm not a tech head. The death of Steve, to me personally, is the equivalent to the death of a Beatle. In fact, a friend of mine said to me last night that he called Steve basically the John Lennon of technology, which I thought was pretty good. And to echo the sentiments of another friend of mine, I feel the way she feels this morning. I feel hollow. I've been using Macs, involved with them, I think around since 1990. I bought an SE30 on a student discount at Temple University in Philadelphia, and played with Windows a little, but I always ended up back on the Mac. It was just a very simple machine. It was intuitive. I could just do what I wanted to do. As Steve used to say, when you want to go pick up something at the grocery store and you have to use your car, you don't want to know anything about braking. You don't want to know anything about fuel injection. You don't want to know anything about cylinders, pistons, rods, and all that kind of stuff. You just want to turn the key, go, get your stuff, get back, and get on with your life. And that's what I felt the Mac was all about. And I know he had said it pretty much in those terms several times. So I thought maybe the one thing we could talk about is the Tuesday event, because ironically, if you remember, I off the top of my head did not remember the name of the video that Apple produced back in 1987, but it was of a gentleman coming down in his robe or something like that, dressed for work, sits at his desk, opens up a book which had a tablet in it that remarkably looks somewhat iPad-ish, and talks to a servant on his computer who responds to him, just like what we saw at the show. I may be living in a fallacy, but in my mind, I think Steve willed himself to live that long to see the birth of his baby, and that's what we saw on Tuesday. For all the grumblings about 4S not having this, not having that, you're going to look back in a couple of months and you're going to realize what history just happened. Now, the reason I think that Steve willed himself, and it's sort of almost like sort of fitting, he was such a showman that it's like a Hollywood ending, is that I read some reports from doctors, and it wasn't really pancreatic cancer. They said it's a misnomer to call what he had pancreatic cancer. Yes, it involved his pancreas, but it involved a very rare tumor, and that's where the problems came in. And from what I read, they said most patients are expected to live 2-3 years after diagnosed. Steve lived, I guess, roughly 7 years since he was diagnosed. And to me, it's just like a Hollywood ending. He finally saw the birth of what he wanted. And then the next day he sort of said, I'm done. Let's go.
Hi, I'm Chuck Joyner of Mac Voices. When Frank asked me to do this week's opinion piece, I thought I'd be talking about the iPhone 4S or the Kindle Fire or one of the other tech headlines of the week. Unfortunately, there's really only one story in the tech world, and really in the larger part of the rest of the world as well, and that's the passing of Steve Jobs. The internet has been flooded with quotes by Steve and about Steve and accolades and analyses of his contributions, and I'm not going to try to compete with that. It's been a time of sadness. It's also a time of reflection, And I think the best reflection that you can do and that I've been doing is to look around and see the impact that Steve Jobs and Apple, under his leadership, the impact it had on your life. I'm sitting in front of a Macintosh. I've got an iPhone 4 in my pocket. The iPhone 4S will be ordered shortly. There's an iPad that just came off my desk at work. There's an Apple TV in my living room and my bedroom. You know, the list can just go on, and I bet you have a lot of the same things. These aren't just products, though, that you buy and sit on the shelf and use occasionally. They integrate into your lifestyle. They make you able to do things that you couldn't do before, do them better, easier, faster. They encourage you to play with them. They encourage you to get better with them. They just make your life better. And I can't think of higher praise for anyone, whether you want to give him credit for designing them or leading Apple, the whole Apple experience from the retail stores on down. There are just so many places we could go with this, and you already know them all. Sometimes it just helps, I think, to aggregate them and recognize what a difference it's made to you personally. We've seen heads of state that have not gotten this kind of tribute or this kind of reaction, emotional and otherwise, and I think it's richly deserved. So to Steve, thanks for everything. Thank you for everything you've given to all of us and all of the things that you've allowed us to do with the technology.
There'll always be a light on the magic Apple Kingdom, boys and girls. May flicker from time to time, but it'll always be there. I want to thank Chuck Joyner for sharing his thoughts and feelings. Hope you guys are doing well through all this, and by Monday we'll be doing what Steve wanted us to do, using all his inventions again. So until next time, think Steve.